electricity. So thank you, Cornelius, and anybody else who's and Bilal's electricity is out his in Jackson. But it just happened. Um, just want to say thank you all for being present and being here through it all. And then last but not least, we got like four new members, core members, in the core, aka babies. So Miss Jordan, Miss Perry, Miss Jones, and Miss Titan, congratulations. We have added to our core. Glad to see you all back from leave and just so excited for those beautiful babies to be a part of our network. And so now I am happy to introduce. Oh, and the last thing I want to say is I know I have a t-shirt on today, y'all, but it's because it's a t-shirt from the Emmett Till Interpretive Center. And it's a Mamie Till Mobley quote. If you know, she's the mother of Emmett Till. And the quote says, "What happens to any of us anywhere in the world had better be the business of all of us." And so there are things happening in Minneapolis, all over the United States, and right here in our own states. But let's just remember that whatever happens, we need to know about it and we need to be aware about it. Um, and just send positive energy and do what we can. Yeah. So, with all that being said, now I have the opportunity to introduce someone I've known for quite some time, Mr. Hal Harris. Hal is a 2008 Teach for America Greater Delta alum and an Arkansas-based educator with 20 years of successful experience in rural and urban schools. He started as a founding teacher at Kilp Delta Collegiate High School in Helena, Arkansas, before relocating to be the principal of Little Rock Preparatory Academy. He turned the middle school campus from F to C ranked school in just 1 year. After eventually leading the network's elementary and middle schools as a principal manager, Harris moved on to new leaders as a senior director of program implementation. He led teams nationwide in training instructional leaders at all levels of schools and systems. His most recent works have him supporting leaders locally and nationally with coaching, managerial training, instructional leadership, strategic planning, leadership development, and successful planning as a consultant from firms such as Schoolworks and Heady Avenue Consulting. Hal holds a BA from the City University of New York, the College of Staten Island, and an MED in Educational Leadership from the University of Arkansas via the Impact Arkansas Fellowship, which trains school leaders to lead in the state's underserved communities. He also holds a principal supervisor certification from the Relay Graduate School of Education, and I'm going to add this, he is the husband of Dr. Mansfield Harris, and they have two babies. So, welcome to our keynote speaker, Mr. Hal Harris. Let's give him a hand as he graces us with his words of wisdom today.
Hello, everyone. Can just want to make sure my tech's working. Can y'all hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can. All right, those are some pretty strong thumbs. There you go. There you go. Sharing my screen right now. So I'm so happy that I can join y'all here today. I promise to do my best to give y'all some good doctrine. So before I get started, I just want to share a little bit about myself. So I was born and raised in New York City. I like to brag that I lived in all four of the five boroughs, the only borough being the Bronx. So the reason why I am here today is because my mom had to tell lies. That's a very odd way to tell a story, but let me just give it to y'all straight. So we grew up in a lower income neighborhood, and my mother wanted us to have the best educational options possible. For that to happen, and for us to go to one of the top middle schools in a white suburb in Queens, she had to lie about her address. She did that without remorse. She did that without clouded judgment. She to this day says, I had to tell that lie, I would do it a million billion times because of the pathway that lie set me and my brother on. We attended one of the top junior high schools in the city. That allowed us to attend one of the top high schools in the city. Or you can see from this picture of me wearing that jacket, I also was one of the best dressed in that school too. That then allowed me to go to an institution that's near and dear to my heart, the College of Staten Island, where I was able to graduate valedictorian, become the first man in my family to graduate college, and to join Teach for America. So when I joined Teach for America, I asked them, hey, I want to be sent where I'm needed. Me, being the arrogant New Yorker that I am, assumed that they're going to send me to the Bronx. Instead, they sent me to Helena, Arkansas, where I ended up spending the next 7 years of my life teaching and learning. So this is what I want to tell people who are just doing things here in the Arkansas Delta, Mississippi Delta. It truly is a life-changing experience. As you can see, I learned to drive a school bus. I participated in twin days with my students. I got 90% of them pass the English end of course examination. I got 80% of them to get to and through college within 6 years. I participated in bonfires. I participated in potlucks. I met my wife in Helena, aka you will probably find your life partner in the Delta. So if you haven't found them yet, Core, you are not trying. But the Delta has given me so much in regards to life and learning and leadership. And I still maintain strong ties in the Helena area as well, given that my wife is from there. And what I really learned there, besides the fact that you can learn and you can teach and you can lead anywhere, but that education is possible to change the trajectory of people, and that we ought to get very good at it as practitioners within this profession. After that, I then moved on, as Dr. Williams said, to Little Rock Preparatory Academy and the city of Little Rock, where I did some turnaround leadership. And what worked in the country works in the city. I am not a country mouse in a city house because I was born in New York City, but I was able to take the educational leadership experience that I did gain in the Delta and create something special and unique within Little Rock. Since then, I have moved on both as an educational leader, as a principal, to one who is dedicated to really training principals. So I have worked in the Little Rock School District as their executive director of leadership development. I have worked as a principal manager. I currently now work as a consultant and working nationwide from New York to Puerto Rico, from Atlanta to Los Angeles, and developing schools and communities that really need them the most. And what I have learned in regards to developing those schools is that you can actually measure the coherence of a school. And by measuring the coherence of the school, you can then see if that school will make replicable and predictable results for students. And what we're looking for in regards to those replicable and predictable results is daily grade level progress. Based off my august estimation, there are about 257 points of coherence across 4 areas of school performance: academics, culture, operations, and talent. For our time today and for our theme today of building a stronger Delta, we're going to be focusing on the ones that we have the most control over, which is academics. Now, give me a little clap if you're on the Mississippi side of the Delta. Come on, I want to see some hand claps and stuff. There you go, there you go. I want to give a shout out to those on the east side of the Mississippi River in regards to the Mississippi Miracle, about the great gains you guys have made in literacy instruction. This is so important that we export these practices nationwide. And it again goes back to why I love teaching at home so much. We're proving the possible in this part of the country about what it takes to teach literacy to students. We are really rooting that in the science of reading and the science of learning. And we have to export those practices from PK all the way to AP literature. So that way the nation can follow our lead. I can't really behoove how important it is and how historically significant it is that this aspect of educational improvement is originating within the Greater Delta region. You guys are the vanguard in regards to educational reform in this nation, and we have to take that seriously. What I hope today in regards to getting stronger in the Delta is to make explicit what's going on the east side of the Greater Delta region, so that way you can begin implementing these practices within your classroom starting on Monday. So again, I hope to give you good doctrine. I hope this is a little bit of a church for you, but the point of the church is that you begin implementing those practices immediately. And with that said, I want to start with the first of the 3 tips that I want to give you. The first tip I want to talk about is cognitive load theory. And cognitive load theory undergirds effective educational practice. This man right here, his name is Carl Hendrick. He is an educational psychologist who is a key proponent of cognitive load theory, which has emerged since the 1890s. Not the 1890s, my bad. I'm lying to y'all. Since the 1980s, as a very strong way of being able to manage working memory. What do I mean by working memory? Let's play a game. I want you guys to read this number to yourself. Take 5 seconds to read it out loud to yourself. I'm watching the screens. I'm a good teacher. I should see some moving lips if you're on video. Read the number to yourself out loud. Give me a clap if you read the number like this: 7124455. So, in regards to cognitive load theory, this is what's considered 7 bits of information. Let's try this again. I want you guys now to read the number like this: 712445. Say it out loud. I'm going to narrate the positive right here. Thank you, Zach, for reading it out loud. Thank you, Mr. Cooper, for reading it out loud. This is what's considered 4 bits of information. Give me a thumbs up if this is easier to remember than reading individual numbers. All right. I want to try something else now. We have the same set of numbers, but now I'm going to take into account the dash that we have here. I want everyone out loud to read the numbers like this instead: 7, 12, 44, 55. 7, 12, 44, 55. Again, 4 bits of information. Give me a thumbs up if this is easier to remember.
7, 12, 44, 55.
Thank you, Kenneth. I appreciate you. Is that easy to remember, Kenneth?
I'm an actor. I can remember it in any way.
Oh, okay. I like that. Toot your
Yeah,
own
that's how
horn.
I read it.
All right. So this is the reason why phone numbers are the way they are. An early proponent of cognitive load theory was actually an industrial psychologist who worked for the Bell Phone Company. And the phone company charged him with being able to create a phone number calling system that humans could recognize. During his research, he discovered that humans, the average human, can only memorize between 3 to 5 bits of information. That is called working memory. When we acquire new information, we should not exceed no more than 5 bits of information. If it's more, we have a hard time transferring it into long-term memory. And what learning is for our kids and for adults is simply a positive change in long-term memory. So by being able to accurately chunk new bits of information, we do not overload the working memory of our students. We do not overload the working memory of teachers. So when it comes to that practice, there are several things in which we can do that that helps us manage that working load. So that way kids have a better time of understanding new content. The 2 teacher practices that I would like to see in your class starting on Monday is called the worked example effect and your success criteria. So what we mean by the worked example effect is exactly what I just showed you. I gave you guys 3 very clear, explicit examples of working memory, 2 exemplars of what it would take to help you successfully memorize something, and 1 non-exemplar, the 7-bit thing that shows you this is what the error state is. Regardless of subject area, if you're teaching math, if you're teaching science, ELA, social studies, gym, dance, students need worked examples and non-examples. So that way they have an easier time of putting that schema into their long-term memory. You do that repeatedly, the working memory becomes lower, and then it becomes long-term learning, something that they can summon instantly. The second thing that you should see in all classrooms is a success criteria. A success criteria is, to me, one of the most important instructional behaviors. It is a bullet point of between 3 to 5 bits of information of what successful work looks like, normed to the work example that you give. Teachers, if you want to have stronger classrooms in the Delta, and if you begin implementing these 2 practices on Monday, I swear you will be ahead of the pack in regards to that. And I'm going to tell you why in regards to that to the second tip that I'm going to be giving you, which is explicit instruction over everything. This researcher is named John Hattie, and he's responsible for the book, a series of books called Visible Learning. What Visible Learning does, he takes a meta-analysis, which means he takes a compendium of one specific educational practice, and then he measures the efficacy in regards to student achievement. The number that spits out at the end of that meta-analysis is called an effect size. What he found in his research are over 2,100 meta-analysis in regards to education is that if an educational practice has an effect size of 0.40, and if that teacher behavior is consistently implemented, it will result in a year of student learning. The exciting part about this is that in his research, he's found many teacher behaviors that have an effect size beyond 0.40, which means that there are effective practices that can have students get 2 to 3 years of growth in the classroom within a single year if we become expert at these behaviors and if we consistently implement them as well. What are some of these practices? I'm glad you asked, core members. So if we take a look at some of them, feedback, 0.92%. Effect size of 0.92. Mastery learning. What by mastery learning, do you have an objective and can you measure it? 0.67. Success criteria, as I mentioned earlier, 0.64. Explicit teaching strategies, 0.64. Direct instruction, 0.56. Scaffolding, 0.52. Work examples, 0.47. All of these are the aspects of explicit instruction, which you guys have been trained as to the I do, we do, you do model. Now, I understand that there's a lot of educational stuff out there that talks about let's do inquiry-based learning, let's do project-based learning, let's do discovery-based learning, let's do expeditionary learning where we get the kids out. Those are effective to an extent that the explicit instruction has happened first. Explicit instruction must always happen first. So what that means in practicality, if I was to take a look at one of your unit plans, I would expect to see a lot of direct instruction lessons before you move on to the inquiry-based learning. I would expect to see a lot of direct instruction lessons before you decide to have your students do a project. So when it comes to your lesson planning of the I do, we do, you do you have worked examples? Do you have worked non-examples? Do you have success criteria? From that success criteria, are you giving students corrective feedback by asking the right questions and pointing out how to do it? Are you having them do the route memorization work before you have them do the project-based work? Because remember, working memory is only limited to 5 bits of information. If you're giving them a project or an essay, you might be overloading them with 20 to 30 bits of information that they will not be able to express properly in an academic context. So we go slow to move fast. And John Hattie, if you take a look at that book or go to his website, you will see what those practices are, and you can begin supporting yourself and implementing those practices as soon as possible. The last tip I want to give you as well is in regards to community. And basically speaking, make sure that you're building a very trusting learning community. I'm glad Dr. Williams mentions the political climate that we're in. I want to be explicit what that climate is. They are snatching children of color off the street and sending them to a country they have never visited before. They are disappearing families who have moved here, who have fled the pharaohs of their homeland to try to create a new one based on freedom and merit and opportunity. They are killing people in the streets for resisting them. If you go to Minneapolis, what you then see in Minneapolis, however, is that the response to that level of tyranny and oppression is community. The dictionary defines community as a unified body of individuals, such as the people with common interests living in a particular area, a group of people with a common characteristic or interests living together within the larger society. I think that's a perfect encapsulation of how Minneapolis has been able to resist this level of oppression. They have a community that is predictable and that is safe for their students. If you are teaching here in the Greater Delta, you live in a community that is predominantly African American. You live basically in what is the ancestral homeland of African American culture in the United States. It's our homeland. It's our Wakanda. It's our Kaer Morhen. It is our citadel. And again, going back earlier to what we have done, we are now pioneering what it means for effective leadership practices, what effective reading practices, what effective learning practices look like in this nation. That is a very big deal that it is emerging here. Doretta Hammond's research teaches us how to make sure that our learning communities, which are our classrooms, are a safe and consistent space for our students to learn. There is no difference in the way in which human beings learn. For example, I work literacy from pre-K all the way to AP. I have a current project in which I'm working with some struggling schools in Denver public schools in regards to phonics instruction. There is no difference in how human beings across languages and cultures learn how to read. It is not a natural behavior, but through our orthographic mapping, aka the workings of three different distinct parts of our brain, regardless of language, whether it's phonetic or kanji based, we can learn how to read, how to take symbols and ascribe a sound to them and spit it back out. And there are also commonalities such as dyslexia that causes it not to happen. So since we all learn to read in a very, very similar way, when we see struggles in the classroom that are not related to the academic content and that are not related to explicit clear instruction, and hopefully by Monday you guys will be doing that based off the doctrine I gave you guys, it's because it doesn't feel like a safe learning community. If you buy Zaretta Hammond's book, she gives you very explicit and practical advice on how to generate trust in the classroom and how to reduce the fear of the lack of structure and the fear of what's going on outside. So that way you can actually learn the key liberatory activity for human beings, which is learning how to read and how to consume information on your own. Because as she says, it is not enough to have a classroom free of psychological and social threats. The brain needs to be part of a caring social community to maximize its sense of well-being. Marginalized students need to feel affirmed and included as valued members of a learning community, and we have to make it safe so that way our students' working memory is not overloaded as regards to where I sit, or do I have my pencil, or is this person going to make fun of me if I stumble in reading? We make it safe so that way the working memory, which can only hold 5 bits of information on average, is free to integrate and to devour the academic content that we're giving to our kids. So with that said, if you scan this QR code, it's going to take you to a page that has what I feel a lot of seminal readings in regards to teachings. If you read those books, you will come out a better teacher, a more competent instructor, and from a leadership perspective, knowing what you need to coach on as well. I also really do enjoy hearing people from the field. So, there's my email right there. You can just really feel free to shout me a holler down. And what I want to do right now is to open up the remaining time for questions. Don't worry, I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now, but Ashley will be able to send you the deck slide where you will have access to that QR code in perpetuity. But again, what I would love to do right now is to take some time for questions.
I'll go ahead and go first, if you don't mind. And thank you again for sharing your time and your space with everyone. Kenneth Getty here, 5th grade. What strategies do you use for ALS? My school is predominantly half and half people, black and brown, and else. Most of them, if not all of them, speak no English at all, and they really push rigor. And a lot of times it's unrealistic when you have students that have they have no they have there's nothing there for them, and so because we can use the key lever tools and all those things, but they don't understand that. So what have you ever encountered anything like that? And if you have, what 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 would you do, or what is your approach for those individuals? What strategies could you give teachers to help those L's?
Okay. So thanks for that question, Kenneth. So in regards to working with multi-language with English language learners who are just acquiring the language, I have coached teachers like that before. One of my last assignments at Little Rock School District was working as a school improvement specialist for Southwest High School, where 30% of the population was Hispanic and 60% of the population were considered newcomers, which means that they were having their very first exposure to the English language. And my work in Denver Public Schools is also working with 3 elementary schools that have very heavy multi-language learner populations. What I always tell people in regards to that is that language starts at the sentence level, and there are only, in regards to basic sentences, a few predictable ways in which you can actually structure that sentence: subject, verb, object. The subject and predicate. The biggest strategy I would use is sentence stems. So, for example, if you're teaching a composition class, you want to give your multi-language learners a sentence stem and only focus on one particular part of vocabulary. The blank went to the park. Give them choice words, and then also have them read those words out loud. So that way they're beginning to develop their orthographic mapping in English. They can do it in Spanish, they can do it in English, but they need to be practicing at the sentence level. That's going to be your biggest bang for the buck. And I would see if either your school has resources that provide sentence stems to what you're teaching and writing, or you can use ChatGTP to generate those things as well if you know what you're teaching.
I use the writing revolution. So I mean, I'm familiar like with that. It's just um getting because we can provide all the resources. I think for them it comes down to the accountability part. Hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing.
So it sounds like you're talking more about culture, right? The accountability culture. That's difficult for me to say because, again, there are various levels of coherence in regards to a school, and that really depends both on your culture, your operations, and performance management in the school. So what I can say is that without knowing your school's SEL discipline structures, my advice is probably not going to hit. So academically, I can say that, and the writing revolution is a great source. But ultimately, I just think it's like going back to the red ham of the trust builders and being able to lower the cognitive load of what the culture looks like in the classroom. So that way they buy into the learning environment as well. So I wish I could give you more specific advice, but I'm not going to just say here, like, I know everything. I don't have enough data on your school context to be able to give that to you.
You
Um,
are very helpful. Thank you.
I had a question. Just when I hear like utilizing a lot of systems and things like that that we're all supposed to follow and all supposed to be precise with, it feels like we're just making it easier for like AI to take over our jobs in the future. Well, I don't know how you feel about that, but it just seems like if we all taught the exact same way, that would be the outcome of this experiment.
So I want to clarify what you're saying. What it sounds like is like, from following the experiment, was it from AI, my presentation? You're saying that we would teach the same way?
Right, like these are, let's all do these systems in our classrooms similarly. Let's all create the similar kind of culture, things like that. It just seems like we're setting ourselves up.
And my push is that we have to be okay with that. So my wife again is a doctor, and medicine is considered a profession. And what a profession is that there are commonly accepted behaviors and norms that a practitioner is not allowed to deviate from. There's a very particular way, as a radiologist, she has to do scans. There's a very particular way in which she does MRI scans or CAT scans or X-rays. And if she deviates from that, she deviates from the norms of the profession. My argument, and a lot of people who I follow on Twitter and read the blogs, they argue that education is not a profession yet because there is an acceptance of many different practices that in regards to teaching children, and a lot of them are not really rooted in evidence. So if we are a profession, there has to be a consensus of what agreed practices that every teacher should be competent in, so that way we can do it. Because if you go into a restaurant and they're not cooking the food, they're not following the rules of their profession. If you go into law and they're not doing stare decisis and following precedent, they're not following the norms of their profession. If you go into any other learning community or any other job that's considered a profession, there's just going to be some things, whether it's written or cultural, that's verboten that everyone does. And a lot of my work as a consultant is saying that, hey, there are educational practices rooted in evidence that has benefits for students. that we are not making this out as a profession as we go on. We just have to have the courage and the discipline to insist that every teacher in the building behaves in a particular way that we know gets students results. And a lot of our schools in education actually do not codify that, which is why instructional leadership is so important. We want to make sure that instructional leaders know what those practices are in regards to exit tickets, worked examples, success criteria, legitimate independent practice, science of reading, science of learning. Studies that year after year after year, ever since Project Follow Through was released in 1950, makes a difference in the lives of students and actually works regardless of educational context.
And we have space for one more question before we close out our keynote today. If
Hello.
there, oh, go ahead.
Um, what advice would you give as far as like people getting into leadership, freshly new? This is my second year in leadership. Like I pride myself because how I got there off of like data and testing. So like what other niches should I like cling on to that'll help me build a confidence and knowing that I'm moving my school. I mean, academically, I know I'm helping with the teachers because it ain't just me. I'm not even teaching. So assisting the teachers will help moving the kids. But what other things can I do besides the small culture things I try to implement to build that confidence in myself and know I can take this to any building and move teachers and students.
All right. Mr. Lyons, you might be asking what leadership role do you have?
Now I'm an assistant principal. The first one I had was a dean of academics.
Got it. So, in regards to that, I think the most important leadership behavior and the most important managerial behavior is to meet with each of your teachers once a week, every week for 30 minutes without fail. Those weekly meetings are going to be the most important thing in developing the relationships with your teachers and
Uh-huh.
getting yourself closer to looking at work. My theory of change in regards to supporting schools and leadership in schools, say the thing or take the action that gets you closer to looking at student work. The mode that a lot of leaders often take is that they prioritize observations. But I would insist that you prioritize your one-on-one meetings because even if you don't get to observe a teacher, you can ask them to bring student work and you could do a student work analysis together. But the weekly meetings that you have with your people are extremely, extremely important, again, to making sure that every time you're sitting down with them, you're talking about student work and keeping their focus on that.
Okay.
You do that, you will be ahead of 80% of all school leaders in this nation. And trust me, I've been coast to coast.
I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much, Hal, for being our keynote today and sharing with us. I'll put the QR code in his email into the next CM newsletter so that you all can have access to that. But again, thank you so much for sharing your story, and I hope that it was enjoyable for our core members. Two things to give to y'all before you head to MDLD sessions. The first one is we have been plugging throughout the day of being on camera. And one of the spaces that we want is we want to appreciate and celebrate like our core members who have been on camera and like truly like engaging in the lesson session, not just like through the chat, but also like with their faces. So we have a surprise wheel for a raffle for all the names of the videos that we've been seeing on camera throughout the day. So our winner for that, you will receive an email from me. Congratulations. You will receive an email from me with a nice sweet treat that you'll get in a few minutes. And then the last other
Thank
thing,
you.
you're welcome. And the last other thing is that our last summit of the year, I just wanted to plug this to save the date. Make sure you have it. It is our Community Network Summit, April 25th. It'll be at Revive Collegiate Charter School, and it's also our transition to alumnihood ceremony. Second years in the core member newsletter, there was part to do to like submit like the guests that you want to come as well as like some things for this ceremony. So please, if you could fill that information out, but go ahead and make sure if you don't have it on your calendar, add that now so that you have it for that last summit. But thank you again for being our keynote speaker, Hal. And you all are now free to go to your MDLD time.
Quick question, is there a limit for guests?
I think the limit we have right now just for catering, it's about 3.
All right, thank you.
Have a great rest of your summit, y'all. Al, thank you so much again for being our keynote, actually.